Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I'm talking to Benjamin with Koelsch Senior Living Communities. We got some really cool, exciting stuff to talk about today. We're all about making the lives of people who live and work in senior living better. Benjamin, thank you very much. Don't say anything yet. I am going to play our intro and then we'll get into it. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. So before we get started in our conversation, I want to say thanks to KARE with a K for sponsoring this episode of Foresight TV. They are the single best way for you to fill those shifts that you don't have somebody on your own team to fill. They will provide you great team members at a lower cost than a traditional staffing agency. And if you love those people, you can hire them without any penalty. So if you're looking at your schedule, even this weekend, and saying, oh man, on Sunday, I got a spot to fill. I don't know. I've called everybody I can think of. There's nobody there. It's not too late for you to reach out to KARE and let them fill that spot for you at a reasonable cost. You'll feel like hiring that person is practically free because it's so much less expensive than using an agency. So check them out. And the last thing I want to say is if you are a caregiver and you are looking for a way to pick up some extra shifts, you ought to be talking to KARE. They can give you great work experience, great income, and give you some variety in your workspace. So with that, Benjamin, welcome. Let's start with who you are and who your company is.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's so good to be with you. And I totally agree with you about KARE. I love the KARE people. Shout out to them. There's so much, they're doing some really innovative stuff. Yeah, Benjamin, and I'm a social gerontologist. Started when I was a kid, actually. I started volunteering in retirement communities, and I got really angry because I saw the greatest generation wasting away playing bingo and watching Judge Judy. And I also felt like I belonged because these places in America are so unique. Most of us in America feel like we have no community. We're isolated. We're on suburban streets and just don't have real community. But the assisted living, independent living communities in the United States are one of the rare places where you can enjoy real community with 100 older people, 100 younger people, all living life together on a day-to-day basis. And so that got me started in the field about 20 years ago. And right now I work for Koelsch Communities. I think you guys heard.
So tell us who Koelsch Communities is.
Koelsch Communities is a family-owned and operated organization by the Koelsch family, and they have standalone memory care, standalone assisted living, and standalone independent living in 8 different states. And a ton of fun working for this family. I think a couple things I really love working with, reasons why I love working with them are, number one, integrity. In my whole career with them over a decade, I've been able to maintain integrity in a field that's not always known for that. And so that's really big for me. And then I love getting to work in their communities because their communities are just beautiful places that nourish my soul. And that is fantastic. And then being a creative person and a person that loves to develop new things, explore new ideas, especially around kind of dignity, respect, honoring the person, that give me a lot of freedom to explore those areas.
Cool. So as you look at, we've come through this COVID thing. We're sort of COVID. I mean, it's still kind of sitting there, but it's mostly in the rear view mirror, at least in sort of the acute phase. What do you think? What do you think is different? What do you think the future is looking like for senior living? Are you excited, depressed, something else?
Well, I can give you a story from just day before yesterday. I was presenting to a group of elders at the park at Copper Creek in Chandler, Arizona. It's an independent living community. And I was doing a workshop on the power of perspective in aging and the research behind what we think about aging, how it impacts our bodies significantly. And I'm talking to all these older people. And afterwards, they're all coming up to me going, oh, that was so helpful. And I'm going to Switzerland next week. And I just finished running a business and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And they're all excited about life. And one guy comes up to me and he's 96 and he's like, yeah, that guy right there, he saved my life. He saved my life. I was alone. I lost my wife. I had nothing to live for. And the men I met here saved my life because I have purpose now. I have friendship now. And as I was spending time at this independent living, I lived there this week. I just watched these older men that in most of America would be alone at home, really enjoying life together. And I was just reminded that after the pandemic, I think there's an even greater sense of we need this. We need community. We need friendship. We need to be with people every day, not just once in a while. And so I think that if that hunger continues in our psyche as a culture, I think there's going to be a long time that communities for people to live together will be important. Now, whether that becomes intergenerational over the next 10 years, whether that shapes out in different ways, I don't know. But I think that hunger to live in community is going to continue.
So I love this story. As you were telling this story, I'm thinking about the Washington Post hit pieces that are really now hit pieces that came out, right? And I think that one of the failings that we've had as an industry is that that story you just told, we shouldn't be the counter has sort of been, well, it's not really that bad. And I agree with that, but it's not a very compelling story. What's a compelling story is I moved into this senior living community and it saved my life. And we've been let me rephrase that. We have been completely silent and refuting these articles by going out and telling these stories. We need to be collecting these stories. We need to be telling these stories and saying, yeah, the truth of the matter is we're human beings and the industry has no control over every single operator that's out there. And there are bad operators in every industry, every place in the world. And said that's one thing. And the second thing is sometimes bad things just happen because of humanity. But the truth of the matter is we are changing the lives of hundreds of thousands of people to the better, millions of people every single day. And we got to be telling that story. So I love that. So you've got a new, I don't know exactly new is the right term, but you got this really cool program you're doing. Let's talk about that.
You're referring to Humanitude?
Yes, Humanitude.
Okay. Yes. So this is this could be a generational project.
Yep.
It is something that's been going on for 40 years, just not in the United States. And I was fortunate enough to find a flyer about a event coming up at Oregon Health and State University. Dr. Ekstrom is a geriatrician there at OHSU, and she was on sabbatical and she had been to Japan and she had been to the Tokyo hospital and had seen incredible results with their older patients. And she asked the lead doctor at the Tokyo hospital, what are you guys doing differently? How are you getting these outcomes with the older people coming to your emergency rooms? And the doctor from Japan said, well, we use Humanitude. And Dr. Ekstrom's going, I have no idea what we're talking about. So it led her on a journey to go to France, where Humanitude began and spread across Europe and into Asia. And so she brought the founders back to the United States, and I was able to go to a 2-day session, just learning about what they're doing on the other side of the ocean. And, I asked some questions, how could we get it here, et cetera. And the price tag to get people from Europe over here is incredible. And there was only one English speaking trainer in the world. Everybody else spoke Japanese or Korean, or they spoke Spanish or French, but there was only one person who spoke English. So I was like, this will never happen. Oh, whatever. A couple years later, I was able to work with a great colleague over at the Workforce Board, in the county I happen to live in, and I learned about how most workforce boards, tune up, by the way, if you're in senior living, a lot of workforce boards have funds to help you train your staff. And so I didn't know that. I don't think a lot of senior living operators know that or even take advantage of it. But if you want to upskill your team members in something, there's a good chance that the workforce boards in your county will actually give you money to do that, as long as you agree to give that person a promotion, pay them better, et cetera. And so we use some of those funds to be able to bring these folks from France and Portugal to come to the United States just to pilot this 40-year-old protocol training that was going on in France in the hospitals and across Europe. 1,000 organizations, 50,000 people had been trained in the past 40 years. And I was like, I want to see what this does. And so we did several pilots, mostly in Washington. And those pilots consisted of 4 days of training we would pick 10 nurses and caregivers, and they would get the training in these 4 days with a nurse trainer, and they would do care for most of, good half of the training, and then they would debrief and learn technique in the other half of the training. And we had to pick, in every community where we did this pilot, we had to pick the 10 most challenging resident situations. People who were screaming, people who were yelling, people who were refusing care, people who were unable to stand, people who hadn't stood in 2 years, people who were having really challenging care issues. And so they would do the training with our team with these 10 residents. And by day 4, they would measure how well they had dealt with those challenges. And pilot after pilot, 80 to 90% resolutions on the things that we had said, these are the challenges that these residents face. And so we were kind of awestruck, like, okay, this is different. Like, we've done lots of trainings, we've subscribed to trainings, we show the videos, we do this, we've developed our own, but we never see actual results in people's lives changing. And just a couple quick examples, and you can interrupt me, Steve, but an example, we had a gentleman who would not take a shower with anybody except for his daughter. And you can imagine, being a memory care, we hate the idea that we can't help that person get their shower, that we got to call the daughter and be like, hey, you got to come in and help her. So after day 4 of the training, the team had put into practice very specific techniques, and he was taking showers with our team. Another gentleman wouldn't sleep in his bedroom. He would sleep out in the living rooms at night, right? Wouldn't sleep in his bedroom. By day 4, he was sleeping in his bedroom. And the reason was they delivered care in a way that helped him feel totally respected, totally safe. So his bedroom became a safe place again. So I had several gerontologists who have developed curriculum throughout their lifetime for their career come and take the trainings as well to vet with me and see, am I seeing something different? Am I just wowed by this, but there's something else in the United States that's the same? And there was a resounding no. We've never seen anything like this. We've developed curriculum. We've trained our whole lives. This is unique. This is different. And so now we're on a journey to get the first US-based folks trained in this year-long process to become trainers. So I can go on and on. That's a little.
Yeah. So I want to see if I can frame this. So the program is primarily about creating a better life experience for residents who are challenged. Is that correct?
I mean, they would say it is the core technique that every CNA, every nurse needs to embody and have in all of their care. Certainly, as an operator, right, you're incentivized to choose things that are going to help you deal with the most challenging situations you have. And so that's a big selling point, if you will, of doing this, because it actually works.
So would you use this? Do you expect to use this all the way across the continuum from independent living to memory care? Would it work in skilled nursing? Or is this primarily, in your case, assisted living and memory care?
So in Singapore, they have adopted the program for their whole continuum of care. So right now, Humanitude team is training up hospitals, skilled nursing, assisted living, memory care, home health, and home care. So the whole continuum will be speaking the same language, adopting the same technique. So as people move from one spot to the other on the continuum, they're getting the same level of care. And as a government that's funding a lot of those things, they know they're going to get good outcomes. So it is targeted at all those levels.
So will this increase your staffing costs because you've got to have more intimate care, or what does it do to staffing costs?
You know, that's a question that a lot of our own caregivers will ask sometimes.
Right.
When we train in just basic training on dementia, I'm like, oh, take the extra 30 seconds to have a conversation. And my answer is always, it's going to take 5 people to do this shower if you don't spend 2 extra minutes to get the shower done. 5 times 5 is 25 minutes. 25 minutes is bigger than 2 minutes. And then after that, you're probably going to have to do an incident report because the person probably fell, or there was probably a lot of screaming. And so someone probably reported you for elder abuse. So do you want to do the hour-long report and the investigation and 5 people helping with the shower? Or do you want to do 2 extra minutes of personal care? So I believe it will actually reduce the staff time it takes to deal with challenging situations. Even in the ones we talked about, right? We have the gentleman that requires a shower. Just think how much coordination it takes to get the daughter in, help her make sure that happens. Like there's so much noise around that situation where now the person can just get a shower when they need it, right? So my feeling and my, from all my experience in this field, saves time.
So I'm like completely blown away by this, right? So my mom had a stroke. And she lived the last 8 or 10 months in a lovely 6-bed board and care here in the Sacramento area where I live. But I remember so vividly the guy who owned the building, who I liked a lot, who I have tremendous respect for. He called me up one day and he said, "I got to talk to you about your mom." I was okay. He said, "I don't want you to come in and think that we're neglecting her, because every time somebody even tries to touch her a little bit to give her a bath, she starts screaming. And it is awful and horrible, and we don't know what to do." And so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, man, well, could Humanitude have made this all different for her?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the ways I think that one of the reasons I really have invested a lot of time, energy, resources in this project is because it's so technique based versus what we commonly see in the United States. I was just reviewing a curriculum for one of the states. I'm on a board of one of the states' curriculum developing arm of DSA, the Department of Health and Human Services, and they're putting out a new dementia curriculum. And I'm looking at this going, so much of this is theory. It's bullet points of, hey, know their history really well, or hey, you need to speak calmly, or, just really basic things that you give that to a caregiver who's going to walk into your mom's situation and they're not going to know what to do. But what I have found with the Humanitude team and the way they teach and the way the curriculum is developed, it's about memorizing specific techniques. It's not about just a general principle of have a calm voice, know their background, be ready and patient, come up in front of them, just the basic things that everybody talks about. It's very specific, exactly how many times to knock before you go in that room. How to knock as you continue into that room, because you're constantly working to get consent from that person to be in their space, right? There's a whole technique around knocking, which you would never think. Like in America, we would write a bullet point, knock before you enter the room. In Humanitude, there's like a page-long technique on exactly how to memorize how you knock as you go into someone's room, right? And then how you give that shower. There's a whole technique around exactly the process you go before you ever even get to the shower. Things that maybe take 10 seconds, but little details that if you're not born that way, born a caregiver, so to speak, you may not even know to do them. One of their beliefs is that anybody can become a caregiver or nurse. It's not, you don't have to be born that way. You just have to learn the skill set. Just like we teach doctors how to be a doctor with very specific skills and knowledge, they believe that we can train people to be excellent caregivers, whereas a lot of us believe you kind of have to be born with the personality. They don't believe that. They say if you do these techniques, you will deliver the kind of care that those star caregivers who were born that way, that they're able to give. You can give the same kind of care. So yes, in answer to your question.
So how long does it take? How does the training? I've got about 2 hours worth of questions for you in the next 10 minutes. So how long does it take so let's say I want to do this. You're doing this in one of your communities. How long does it take to get your team trained up to be able to do this?
So there's a number of factors on exactly how long it would take to train a whole building. It depends on whether you have a trainer already, whether there's a trainer in your area, et cetera. But basically, it's 4 days per 10 people to get level 1 training, where you want 90% of all of your staff to have that training. We're going to focus first on our RAs and our nurses. They do have other trainings available for active living, for dietary, et cetera. We're going to focus first and foremost on our resident assistant team. We're going to expose everybody else to the content in shorter trainings, but we're going to give our nursing staff and our CNA staff the full 4-day training. Then there is a level 2 training, and ideally at least one person in every care center will be a level 2 trainer. That's 2 weeks of extra training where you go over more techniques that you couldn't fit into the first 4 days. And those folks, part of their role is to observe each level 1 person regularly, routinely in providing care with a clear checklist of technique, and they check you off and they're able to show you, oh, here's some things you could work on. Here's some things you did really well. So you keep those things alive. And they're also then kind of the resident expert, so that when you have a challenging situation, you go to that person and say, okay, we don't know how to deal with this. We've practiced what we learned in level 1. You've been to level 2. What are things you can bring in? And then level 3 is the trainer, someone who can certify all those level 1 people. That is a long process. It is at least 18 weeks of training where you're actually helping deliver that level 1 training, and you're going through more intensive training. So most people it would take them 6 months to a year to become a trainer. And that's very different than most things in the United States. Most things in the United States, you can become certified in maybe a week, maybe 4 days, maybe all online. There's no online for the trainers. They have to be trained in person. They have to be trained. Maybe there's video watching them or something like that. But it is like training something to become the next Gordon Ramsay, because these trainers have to be able to go into any hospital, any skilled nursing, where everybody does not believe you can do what you want to do, where everybody's skeptical of you, and they need to be able to deliver results in 4 days. So they're very picky at Humanitude about how much training they require someone to get before they can train other people, which I love that. I love that focus on quality rather than just on churning through as many trainers as we can get so we can get our brand name out. Like, I love that focus.
So how are you guys going to actually make this happen in your organization, particularly this 6 months thing?
So we are
9 months thing.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're flying people over from Europe to train our caregivers and nurses. While they're doing that, we have the level 3 folks taking those trainings with them and becoming trainers. So, we're having to pay the cost of flying them over, getting them here, and then training our staff while also training the next trainers. So after 6 months of them coming and doing trainings here, we'll have our own trainers who are able to then, go anywhere in the country and train our team.
So I'm not working for your organization. I'm just looking at this and I'm saying, I want that too. What do I do?
Well, I would be happy.
Will you guys help other people? Do I have to go to Europe too? What do I do?
Yeah, so Humanitude is eager to expand across the United States, and they are looking for trainers. And we'll either be using our own people, or if Humanitude and us find someone that we think will work, in Koelsch and outside of Koelsch, we may do a partnership in that respect. They typically hire people who are nurses or physical therapists to become trainers. Sometimes they'll make an exception to someone who's just been in the industry for years, but they want people who have that physical education, physical experience of actually transferring residents, bathing residents, dressing residents, because a huge part of the training is how to do that well. Where a lot of people that train dementia care in the United States and train just caring for elders, they're folks who have a lot of head knowledge. They've run organizations, but they haven't spent day after day in the trenches doing the work of transferring people who have lost their ability to stand. They really want people who've got that skill set, because it's such a huge part of what they teach, which is also important for us from just risk management standpoint. We really want these state-of-the-art transfer techniques taught to all of our team, because a lot of the ways we transfer people in the United States are not really very, very safe. And they've developed some very safe ways to transfer people.
This is like so cool. I mean, I think, and you probably don't, do they have any data in terms of like increasing length of stay? I mean, what I'm interpreting as I hear you talk about this, Benjamin, is I do this. And in fact, what I probably end up doing is I end up having happier residents, which means I'm probably actually going to reduce my workload and maybe even reduce my staff pressure and probably get longer lengths of stay because people are happier. Any data on that?
The data that they're collecting, there's a lot of peer-reviewed journal articles, mostly in other countries like Japan, that are demonstrating the efficacy of the program. They haven't put out any statistics on length of stay, but some of the stats that research seems to show are things like 60% reduction of days in the hospital, decrease of antipsychotics by over 80%, 80% reduction in what some folks would call behavioral psychological symptoms of dementia, and then less than 4% of residents in a community that practices this would be considered bedridden, because a big part of their focus is making sure that standing is part of everybody's life until the day that you pass away, because so many health outcomes are tied to you standing for several minutes a day, you being enough time standing, even if it's during care. Your standing is so important to your health. And so a big part of their measure of success is how few residents are considered bedridden in any memory care, any skilled nursing that they work with. And then another big measure of what they focus on is consent. One of the standards they have is zero forced care, meaning nobody should ever be forced to receive care. And if the techniques are practiced correctly, you reduce the need to ever have someone be forced to take a shower, forced to dress. They will consent. They will give their consent, which is a very big part of our culture in the United States. Consent for things that have to do with intimacy. And so it's a big part of how our culture needs to change in the United States, because we're okay with forced care in the United States today. They may on the books, maybe not, but it happens in every single assisted living and memory care in the United States today. And so I'm really keen on seeing us get to zero forced care.
Cool. So how long will it take you to sort of have it fully implemented in your entire organization? A year? More than a year?
Well, let's see. If we get our first trainers, I mean, think we got 2,000 employees divided by 10 people per session. If we have 4 trainers who could potentially do 40 a week, right? Yeah. 2,000 divided by 40 a week. Anyway, it'll take us several years to get every single person completely trained. But we're catching up to Europe and Japan in that respect, right? And so we've got a ways to go. But we're going to focus on key leaders in each location, right, who can influence other staff. And we're already seeing that happen naturally. When we do these pilots, we have staff come back and start teaching their fellow. We didn't even ask them to. It's not part of the program, but they just start holding in services to teach what they've learned.
So have you actually taught some of your team members already? You've already brought them over and taught this to some of your team members?
Oh, yeah. We've done at least 5 pilots so far. So we've had at least 50 to 60 of our team members trained.
And how do the team members feel about it?
Well, that's probably one of the most exciting things. I would love to show you this video clip I got of a CNA who'd just taken the class. And she looks at her hands and she says, because they always do a debrief on day 4. Like, what did you learn? What happened? And she's like, I learned that I have the power to change these residents' lives. Like, in my own hands, I have that power. Because there's so much of this idea that the doctors and the nurses have all the tools and the caregivers are just carrying out the grunt work. When they take this training, they realize they have more power than any doctor in the United States to change the quality of life of the elders they care for. After day 4, consistently team members realize I have more power to change the care of my residents than any professional at the doctor or nurse level. I have that in my own body, the ability to change so much of their life. And so we hear consistently empowerment. I've had at least 2 nurses who are thinking of quitting the nursing field say, I'm staying in the nursing field because I took this class. This reminded me why I am in this field to begin with. So we've had really good responses.
So I'm sitting here going nuts in my head about this, Benjamin, and I'll tell you what. I think that there are a few senior living organizations out there who've decided to not have a staffing crisis. I talked to somebody yesterday who, through the whole pandemic, through to this very day, who runs 30 or 40 buildings. I don't have permission to use their name, so I'm not going to say who it is. They have not used a single agency.
Wow.
They're fully staffed. And this happens when we take our frontline people and we let them know that they're part of the solution and they're not just grunt workers. And they feel like they're empowered, they're heard, they talk. This is amazing. I mean, this could be so transformative. I look at senior living and I think, there are lots of people who are struggling with occupancy out there, and we start doing these kinds of things. There are enough people to fill every unit that's out there. We put these things in, and we'll have people knocking on our doors to get in there. So, okay, I got to ask this hard question. So I'm sitting here now. I'm an operator. I'm going, I got to have this. I can think of a few people that I want to send this off to and say, you need this. And they're going to reach out to you and say, okay, Benjamin, I want to do this. What are you going to tell them?
I'll say, send me your resume. I'm going to share it with the Humanitude team. And yeah.
So this is really good. This could be revolutionary for the whole industry, particularly for the dementia care, assisted living care. I was talking to somebody yesterday, a friend of mine, and he said, senior living will win when we can make the case that senior living in a senior living community is better than living at home. And I agree with that. And this is the kind of thing that makes that happen. So any last words? What else should I ask you about that I haven't? Because we're about out of time here.
Oh, I just think that it's a time for a lot of us to work together in this, because it's going to take state agencies who create curriculum to buy in and teach some of the core principles like zero forced care as normative. It's going to take hospitals also saying, we want to treat your residents right when they come to us, and we're willing to invest in geriatric learning for our nurses and caregivers. It's going to take assisted living and senior living making time for their staff to get training, and it's going to take the demand of our families saying, we want communities that have demonstrated training programs with evidence behind them. We want to see the evidence behind your training program, right? We want to see peer-reviewed journals that show that this type of training makes a difference. It's going to take all of us working together, I think.
Yeah. And again, I come back to the storytelling part, right? I have this image, and maybe you already have some of this already, right? But I have this image of being able to go to, family members whose loved one is in one of your memory care building and who's experiencing this every day. The daughter who had to go shower, man, I'd love to hear from her and her story about how this is transforming. First off, at a very basic level, it means she doesn't have to show up to go do the shower, and she can show up to do the other stuff that daughters need to do. And just the change and what they're seeing would be so powerful. So this is absolutely outstanding, amazing. You've seen his conversation, his contact information there, and we're going to continue to watch this and follow this. More than anything else, I love your passion for the residents. I love your passion for making the industry better, because as you know, we're all about making the lives of people who live and work in senior living better. Thank you for joining me, and we'll have to do some follow-up on this maybe in 6 months or a year. And thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week with another great show.
Thanks, Steve.